You see how we're building? Each of these builds a logos to tell us. Each is a small logos to tell us, building to tell us more and more about the nature of the Christ. We're going to get a final one about the nature of Christ before we finally get into the big point. In chapter 4, then Jesus was led by the Spirit, the pneuma, into the desert to be tempted. And literally the word is parazo, means tested, to be tested by the diablos, by the one without a point. The one without a point. So, what does he do? After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, and you know, the 40 days and 40 nights is really important for you to know. Where do you think the 40 days and 40 nights comment comes from?
No, the flood.
From what language, though?
Hebrew.
It's a Hebrew euphemism. I don't know if you remember back, because I didn't teach that in the introduction to this class. I almost always hit it. How high could people count in the good old days?
20.
2 hands and 2 feet.
7.
Well, an individual by themselves can count to 20, because you got 20 digits. How much can I count to if I got 2?
40.
40. Why 2? What's the deal about 2?
Takes 2 to bargain.
Takes 2 to bargain. Because why do you need to count anything anyway?
Money.
Commerce. Yeah. Well, they have money, remember, to about 600 BC. So they ain't got no money, but I got what? I got sheep, I got stuff to sell, to trade. So with 40 guys together, with 2 guys together, I can do 40. And that's pretty cool. See? Remember, Hebrew numbers are the consonants. That's why I have so many problems with numbers in Hebrew, because they're literally the consonants. Greek, it's great. I got a base 5, and actually I got Roman numerals base 5. Greek is kind of base 10, but it's a little sloppy. It's not like our base 10. Our base 10 is awesome. Because in our base 10, I can add, subtract, multiply, and divide. But in Greek, I got problems. This euphemism, 40 days and 40 nights, is a Hebraic euphemism that came into the Greek. This points out about Matthew, right? Matthew's a Hebraic thinker. It also points out something else. Why would I use a Hebraic euphemism at this point?
Prophets.
Well, prophets went out into the wilderness. Who else was in the wilderness? Wandering around for more than 40 days and 40 nights, 40 years.
Slaves.
Right?
No man.
This all focuses back to the history of Israel, to the ideas of Israel, because that's the point. We started with the nature of Christ being Abraham, the son of Abraham, son of David, right? That's what Matthew told us. That's the nature. And then we got nature of God, nature of Gentile worship, the Son of God, that's the nature of Christ. And then a fifth one. If I'm going to close out my logos to telos, how do I do it? I want to circulate. I want a circular relationship. Because what does it tell us? It is a beginning and an end. See this? You will find that this is the way Greek logos to telos usually work, especially ones that are very well formed. So the beginning is the nature of Christ is Jewish, from Abraham. And then the end is, now watch what happens. Watch what happens. It's beautiful. So after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. I'd be hungry too. It's a euphemism, so it doesn't literally mean 40 days and 40 nights. It means a long period of time. Because he would have problems counting to 40 anyway.
There's only one man.
In Greek, he's okay, but, in Hebrew, he can't. So the tempter, the tester, literally, came to him and said, now watch what he says. If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. What did we just establish in the previous chapter?
He was the Son of God.
He is the Son of God.
So what's the first question that the tempter asked? If you are the Son of God. Well, what was the proof text that Matthew gave us that he was the Son of God?
This is my son.
said so.
My love.
Because the God said so. The God agapeoed him and said, this is my son. Okay, that's a pretty good witness, don't you think? Look what he did. You know, do you see this? The diabolos. The logical argument with no point. Why does it have a point?
Because it's already been proven.
It's already been proven. There's no point to prove here. Look what he said. So Jesus answered. The word is not necessarily answered. This is why I really get irritated with our translations, because it says literally, he aprokinomai. He concluded by himself. He came to a telos. He came to a telos. Jesus Christ came to a telos by himself. I love this. It's not that he just, I answered. I came to a conclusion by myself. Beautiful in the Greek. It is written. It is grapho. Man does not live on bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God. Do you see what this tie is? What was the mouth of God? This is my son, whom I bought. Do you see what we do? We take these pieces and we cut them apart. And they're not meant to be cut apart. Each of these pieces about the nature of Christ directly connect to one another. And so the baptizer's narrative goes directly into this narrative. And the points of this narrative with Diablos directly prove the points that the baptizer's narrative made, which each of these do that. If you didn't notice, that's what I was trying to point out to you. Each of these narratives point back to the previous one as conclusions within it, because they are beautiful, wonderful Greek logos to tell us. So he says, I don't know if you can get any clearer than this in the Greek. You can get any clearer than this in the English, because he says, man doesn't live by bread alone, but every word that comes from the mouth of God. We just heard the mouth of God tell him that that's my son, agapeos. And this, by the way, is Deuteronomy 8, 1 through 5. And the thing that I want to mention, remember, when we talk about rabbinic context means what?
The entirety of the statement.
Whenever we see a quote, it's not just that quote, it's the entirety of the quote. Because remember, verses were added 800 years later, plus. All the chapters were added years later. All the punctuations added later. All this is added later. So we have to go back and see the full context. And I'm not going to read the whole of the whole of the whole, but Deuteronomy 8, 1 through 5, be careful to follow every command I'm giving you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land that the Lord promised an oath on your forefathers. By the way, Jesus is out in the wilderness. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the desert these 40 years to humble you and test you in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep his commands. Does anyone see a parallel? If we just skipped and just read that one verse, we'd miss what? All the picture here. The picture is that God led the children of Israel out into the wilderness to test them. And now the devil, Diablos, has led Christ into the wilderness to test him, to see if he would follow the commands of God. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your fathers had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes out of the mouth of the Lord. Your clothes did not wear out, your feet did not swell during these 40 years. Know then in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so the Lord your God disciplines you. So therefore, being hungry to Christ was being disciplined by his God. Can't ever miss rabbinic context. Now, then the devil, the Diablos, took him to the Hagios. I love this. Hagios Polis, the holy city. Hagios, remember, the awful city? That's pretty bad. The holy city. The Hagios Polis. And had him stand as and remember, what did the aster, the star do above? It stood. It histemi. It stood. Remember I told you that this is a word used for humans, not for stars. The aster, the star, stood above. Jesus Christ is now hestemi, standing on the highest point. In fact, it doesn't say highest point. It says petaguan, which means the top corner, basically, literally the top wing of the temple. And it says the Hurion, so the sacred place. We're not sure if that means, see, Neos is temple in Greek, but it says sacred place. Literally, it says the Hurion, which is the inner part of a Greek temple. So is it the Holy of Holies? Probably. I'm going to guess, okay, that he took him above and he did not take him in. Now, Jesus can be here. Why?
He is God.
Well, more than that. No. He's purified. He was purified at the Jordan River. Isn't this interesting? The first location they go is the temple where he can be. Now, I can picture this. Can you picture this? Jesus is standing, but it doesn't say the devil's standing. Where's the devil?
Who knows?
Probably still out in the wilderness.
He's hovering beside him. Because why?
He's not
He can't touch his feet. I mean, okay, this is an imaginary picture. But I think, a Hebraic or a Gentile, a reader of this, a reader at this time would see this picture. Because they know that Jesus was just purified, so he can be there. And by the way, what's the first thing you did when you walked through the gates of the temple?
Took your sandals off?
You were purified. You did a mikvah bath and were clothed and ready to go. So now, here we have him standing at the top. And he says, if you are the Son of God, listen to this. If you are the Son of God, this is a logos from the telos. If you are the Son of God, he lego. Satan lego. The devil lego. And look what he says. Balo. Throw. Balo. Balo means throw. Literally is a Greek verb meaning to throw. Do you get this? Diabalo. Parabalo. Hyperbalo. Balo. It's a pun. It's a Greek pun. Because he is the diabolo, right? He is the
no point.
no point, but he says, balo, throw yourself down, for it is grapho. He's copying exactly what Christ said. It is written. He will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Now, apart from what you keep getting told by some people, this is not a wrong quote. Here's the quote. Matter of fact, it comes right out of Septuagint. The reason some people think the quote's wrong is what? Where do they read it?
Greek versus
Old
Hebrew.
Testament.
They go to the Old Testament Hebrew and they look at their translation, which is going to be different. But if you look at the Septuagint, it's a direct translation from the Septuagint from the Greek. So it's not a bad translation. The devil's copying the Septuagint. What you'd expect him to do. But this is what, so you have time to read the whole, I guess. Psalm 91, 1 through 16. Here's the whole psalm. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Where are they?
That's
Holy,
Dale.
holy.
Are they in shadow?
Above it.
Now, there is a possibility they could be in shadow, although they're not. The possibility of shadow is why. Why could they be in shadow? That's not a very good pen.
In the Holies of Holies?
You're in the high place.
They're on the highest point of the temple. But what overtopped the temple a little bit?
Clouds?
Clouds, yeah.
Sky?
No. The fortress of Anatolia. The fortress is right next to the temple, and we think there are two, but there could have been just one tower. And the tower overtopped the temple. Why was there a fortress to Anthony, Mark Antony, right? Why was there